Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. From the comics, TV, and movies, we'll go from the Mojoverse to Earth 616 to the blue area of the moon in order to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I'm the Uncanny Chris.
And I'm your friendly neighborhood Brent.
Alliance, assemble.
Symbol.
All right, volume 63. Well, I noticed you're sounding a little more tired, but you did something you did something pretty amazing last night that was not planned.
It was not planned, but my day ended up being something that likely probably will never happen again unless I get super lucky. I had a new Marvel thing in the morning with What If, and I had a new Marvel thing in the evening with Shang-Chi. Oh man, did I luck into that viewing, and it was awesome.
That was when you posted that. I was like, let me do a chance because nothing ever comes, it seems like, to the Charlotte area. Occasionally you get lucky, but nope, the closest thing would have been Atlanta. But you were like you got an hour away showing, about an hour away you had to drive.
It's even less than that. It ended up being closer to 40 minutes. I had 50 minutes in my head, but it's about 40 minutes from my house. But it was only about 15 minutes from work. And so my wife came up and met me at work, and then we drove up there from there. And so not too bad. It was this GoFobo or whatever, one of those companies that does the premiere or the preview screenings. And I stumbled across it, and the post that I saw that had it was posted 23 hours before I saw it. I'm like, well, I'm going to put my name on the wait list, but obviously it's not going to happen. And then a couple hours later, I got the email, more spots are available. Boom, signed up, and 2 people, done. Called my mom and said, can you please watch the kids tonight? Thankfully, she had nothing going on, and it all worked out. And we came home. My wife and I did a little non-spoiler reaction that's already live in the feed. And that was her podcasting debut. She seemed to enjoy it. And
yes, it was
so fun.
No, you both sounded great. Thank your wife for doing us the honor of having her come on to Marvel Alliance, at first podcasting experience ever. But no, I enjoyed your non-spoiler review. If you haven't checked that out, it's, again, pure non-spoilers. Brent is very adamant on making sure to respect the spoiler, especially it's 2 weeks and 1 day away from preview night.
Yeah, I posted about this earlier. If the movie's out, I kind of feel like it's on you to not be spoiled. So don't go on Twitter if you don't want Twitter to spoil you. The movie's not out yet. So I'm like, and I saw a couple things today from other people who went, and I'm like, I think that's a gray area, and I wouldn't have posted that. So I'm trying to respect everybody so they can have the same fun and excitement that I did, and that I plan on having again in a couple weeks.
Well, Travis Snell's in the chat and saying she carried Brent to a good episode.
I am not going to argue with that.
Yeah.
That's fine with me.
Well, definitely, if you haven't gotten a chance to check that out, listeners, check that out. And it's a good 10, 11 minute, get basically, again, no spoilers, but gets you excited. And I'd say your high level thoughts were this was definitely worth the wait.
Just the action, you don't even know. You don't even know.
I don't.
It's so good. There was so much about this movie that I really enjoyed.
Well, definitely, I'll be looking forward to see it on the evening of September 2nd. My tickets are booked, 9 o'clock showing. Would see it earlier, but Erin's got a open house she's got to do earlier, so I've got to be on daddy duty until she gets home, which, again, totally awesome. Can do that.
Sure, no big deal there. We actually, prior to this, but we're keeping it, we booked a private rental for that Thursday night showing at 7:45. So, Brock is going to be in there. Brock's coming to town for it with me, and some other friends and family, and can have up to 20, but I think I'm looking at really only having about 12 people total. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a lot of fun. My mom's like, "Are you going to keep it?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's for me. I'm keeping it. Yeah, it's going to be fun."
Darn right. I think that's awesome. Clay's in the chat saying, I think your wife being semi-GA is going to get more listeners excited to see the movie. I agree. Her excitement was very genuine.
I don't think she's as GA as she hopes. She doesn't read all the comics and stuff, but you think she's not getting up at 4 a.m. to watch What If with me? She is. So
yeah, you're Erin would no, that's a no. Erin values sleep too much. She'll looks at me, roll over the bed, said, "See you later." She'll see it later.
Those first couple of weeks of WandaVision, her first viewing would be my second viewing. And then she's like, I'm just going to get up with you. Okay. I mean, 4 a.m., let's do it. And every episode since, the only one she missed was when she was out of town.
Well, you know, it's a good time to be a Marvel fan right now. So, but yeah, we got What If to cover. We've got a trailer to cover. We've got a lot of surprise news to cover. So it's a big episode. So let's get those network plugs out of the way. We are part of the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network with 8 shows coming at you 6 days a week. We've got my show, World's Finest True Believers, on Mondays. I dropped a very well-timed episode I was hinting at with the premiere of Titans this week on HBO Max. I dropped an episode that I recorded with Phil from Superhero Stress, and we delved into A Death in the Family, a look at the comic book arc that well, if you've seen previews from Titans, you know what we're talking about, but it's done very well. So hopefully I appreciate Phil coming on for his very first time. It was a great episode, so check that out. But that show alternates on Mondays with Ranger Alliance, so they'll be coming up next week with a new episode. And then followed by DC Alliance on Tuesdays, superhero discussions on Wednesdays, Star Wars Alliance, and a walk through the multiverse alternating bi-weekly on Thursdays. Marvel Alliance, this show drops its audio on Fridays, and Slice of Film is bi-weekly on Sundays. So DC Alliance goes live on the Geekverse stream on Monday nights, and if you're watching this live, we go live on the Geekverse YouTube stream on Thursday nights. We also have a Patreon, so if you want to throw a couple of shekels our way, we've got 2 tiers. We got a $1 tier as our tip jar to say, hey, we're doing a good job. We really appreciate it. And then we've got our $5 tier with early access episodes, ad-free episodes, and Patreon exclusive episodes. Travis Hines and I dropped a Patreon discussion that dropped yesterday, I believe, looking at scoopers and to kind of delve into the bottom of the bottom rung scoopers to the top tier echelon of what we consider to be scoopers. So check that out, patrons. We really appreciate it. We can't do this without your support. And then if you can't join us on Patreon, we totally understand, but you can rate and review our solo feed, Marvel Alliance, and or the Geek Ultimate Alliance feed on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcatcher choice may be. We really appreciate it. And let us plug our official sponsor, that is organicpricebooks.com. Organicpricebooks.com for all your omnibus hardcover collected edition needs. We are basically 1 day away from this final order cutoff for guaranteeing your pre-orders right now. So it looks like we got some Doctor Strange omnibuses coming in a few months. So check that out. Again, 1 day to guarantee your pre-order. At that point, JP says the next final order cutoff, the new solicit, should be coming out sometime next week. But if you are in there and you find something you like, use that code MarvelGUA at checkout for $2 off every single order. Again, are you down with the OPB? That JP and his crew at OPB definitely do. And we appreciate them being our sponsor on Marvel Alliance. All right. Plugs are out of the way. We have another new episode, surprise, surprise, of What If. And man, I enjoyed episode 1, but man, this was, it's hard to not take emotion out of this episode and not to feel a little bit definitely at the end of this episode, not to have a tear in my eye at the end of it with the dedication. But what if T'Challa had become Star-Lord? This was a very special episode.
It was. I'm glad we didn't have to wait too long for it. Reports are he's going to be in 4 episodes total, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad we didn't have to wait long for the first one. It was like, it was at first, it was like, it was peaceful almost. Mm-hmm. Like just hearing him voice the character again. And obviously it's not the exact same version of the character, but we got to hear another performance of Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, or as Cha-Cha if you prefer in this case. And it was a great and just beautiful episode full of surprises. And if last week's episode was easing you into the concept, this week was like, okay, let's have some fun with it and really turn it up a bit.
Yeah, it definitely takes, where a lot of people criticized, a good number criticized, like the first episode, just basically flipping the script on Captain America First Avenger, which I see that, but I also think that's really selling that episode short. This one really takes bits and pieces of the first Guardians movie and really kind of hones in on, I think, what if is about, and looking at this idea of like, is it what if T'Challa was the one taken by the Ravengers and what happens? It's a very unique, and I like kind of how it starts off, because with what the Watcher says in the opening, basically saying that, is your destiny determined by your nature or by the nature of your world? And T'Challa, even though, yes, Yondu is the captain of the ship, he would have been a leader, a good person, and an inspiration no matter where he is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was just so fun to see the extreme differences that T'Challa is Star Lord, and like what happens with the universe versus what, I mean, just look at the Korath example. Like right there, you knew this was going to be different. Of course, Korath sees Peter Quill and he's like, who? And he sees T'Challa and just goes full on fanboy, just full on
Yeah.
fanboy, and you could just tell he was having a ball with it. So much fun, and he's like, "Should I put the gun down? Yes, no." What? It's like such a polite attempted murder that he had going on there.
Yeah. And I just love it that even the little callbacks to, from Infinity War, when he said, do I kneel? Starlet. Well, I really don't like that title. And no, don't get up. Don't do that. So I mean, he's humble no matter what he is, but he's a good person through and through. I mean, you kind of realize at this point very quickly that these aren't the same Ravengers anymore. And it's all due to T'Challa saying that we can be a force of good in the world. So much so, the big shock of the episode is not just that he turns Korath necessarily, or doesn't have to turn Korath. Thanos. He was able to turn Thanos, even though Thanos keeps on bringing up the idea of he doesn't consider it genocide. He just considers it more efficient.
Yeah, his idea had merit or something like that.
Yep.
But even Kraglin was talking smack on him. It's still genocide, big guy or whatever.
Yep.
And I love that they did get Josh Brolin back to do the part. And I thought that was awesome that he was willing to do it. So I was like, yeah, what is it? Like somewhere, like Travis mentioned, I think he had one of those Factor fictions of we'll see Thanos again before,
Yes,
whatever. It's like, well, nailed it. You called that one for sure, because here he is a little earlier than expected. I kind of still thought it might be Eternals. Who knows? Maybe it will be, but I did not expect it to be this soon.
And I think Josh Brolin did it. I think both Chadwick Boseman and Josh Brolin and Karen Gillan.
Karen Gillan,
Yeah.
Yaman Hansu, Benicio del Toro, Michael Rooker, so many of the cast members were them. Now I think about it, I don't know if that was Sean Gunn. I need to verify.
I think it was.
I think it was. It sure if it wasn't, it sounded a lot like him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was in this. He was credited in it, but no one, in my opinion, really sounded flat. I think they all did a really good job. I'm not sure if Josh Brolin's done. I can't say many of them, but like Josh Brolin, I was kind of listening to see, because I mean, he has a very distinctive, very unique, not unique, but just very kind of booming voice. Would it still carry an animated form? And man, that's Thanos. I hear that voice. That's really Thanos. But I liked how he still carried that, as he says before, like the callback to Avengers. Are you crazy? I'm not crazy. I'm mad. He kind of owns it.
Indeed. Yep. Yes. And you know what? I neglected to look it up. Whoever they got to voice cast Drax, I thought did a pretty good job of being a sound-alike for Dave Bautista. No, it wasn't Bautista. You could tell it is, and I know there's a whole story where he says he wasn't even offered Bautista, or the MCU basically, like producers or whatever, like, well, we reached out and we never heard back. I don't know what the story is there. I wish it had been Bautista, but the guy they got to fill in, I thought did a pretty good job. I can't.
Very good deadpan. Very good at the deadpan. He had the humor down. Travis Snell in the chat saying, "What's your percentage of seeing good guy Thanos in live action?"
3.
Yeah, I'm not high on that one. I think this was a nice Nice way to see it. Now, will we see him again? I think we might see him again. We don't have an episode count if this was going to be his only appearance, but it would be nice to see more of the Ravengers. Fred Taskasori, if I
That's
can
right. That's right.
voice tracks. So yes, veteran voice actor. Thank you all in the game. I appreciate that alley oop. But it was interesting just seeing. Did you catch the name of the ship? It's not the Milano.
I didn't catch it at first. It was Mandela, right?
Yeah, Mandela's.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Travis says he sees 50% at that point. He's shooting for the high at that point. I like how all the way we kind of see the influence and how not like how Star-Lord, how T'Challa Star-Lord really, it's just interesting how he as a kid was striving for adventure, striving for, seeing the galaxy, and that he missed home, but not to the extent that I would have. That was the thing that was I don't know, tilted my head a bit. I would have thought he would have been more like eventually really wanted to go home and see his father. I know like Yondu had said they tried to return him home, but it was destroyed. So, I mean, maybe that was, but it just, I don't know. That was, if I had a small nitpick, it was that.
They tell us like, well, he didn't try to go back because he thought it was destroyed. Like Yondu, They flat out call that out. He lied to him. Mm-hmm. But they didn't tell us when Yondu had that lie.
Correct.
So I wonder, like, how long was T'Challa with the Ravagers before they told him, hey, you can't go back again? Was it a week? Was it a day? Was it 3 years? That is something I'm kind of curious about.
Mm-hmm. What did you think about kind of Nebula and the changeover, like whenever Thanos made that change to, where he is today?
Very different Nebula, very different take. And it kind of made you wonder, like, when did T'Challa have his run-in with him that turned Thanos into, because it had to be before he went all crazy on Nebula, right? Because she didn't seem to be nearly as off the deep end as she did like back in Guardians 1.
Definitely sounds like some experimentation with the augmentation to happen, because she did lose an eye, and she does just call him the big guy instead of dad or father. Like there was some stuff done prior to that.
Yeah, I just want to know when, and I also want to know about Gamora. We didn't find out about her at all. What is her situation right now? Is she did Thanos attack Gamora's home planet? Is she just off somewhere else? I know we're going to see her in the show, but I don't know if we'll see her in this universe.
Yeah, because we know we've seen her, at least in the trailer, with Thanos's like kind of double-edged sword at that point, the helicopter sword, as I kind of call it.
The helicopter sword, that's right.
I enjoyed seeing, the Collector, and that was okay. It was interesting seeing how the Collector became the big gangster of it when Thanos changed his ways. It was interesting. I really enjoyed all the Easter eggs that we saw in there, from seeing Malekith being captured, and then Howard the Duck. We all knew that was coming, voiced by Seth Green.
Yep.
And it was cool just kind of seeing it and reading the little amount of Howard the Duck comics I have. It struck a little bit like the Chip Zdarsky kind of portrayal.
Yeah, it did. I wanted to say about the Collector. We had initially heard reports that Del Toro is not going to be reprising the role.
Correct.
And then it came out that he is. And then I listened to the episode and I'm like, is it him? Is it really him? The credits say it was. Okay, it was him. But he was definitely doing a very different voice than what he did in the Guardians movies.
Because that's what I thought too. I was like, I'm not picking up Del Toro as much. Again, I don't have a huge filmography knowing Will Del Toro, but the films that I have seen, he has his accent can kind of come through, but he also is very good at masking his accent as well in different roles. So,
right.
But again, it was interesting seeing him kind of be the gangster that everyone feared.
It was.
But I loved it when T'Challa's basically leaves Howard the Duck and he goes into this spaceport. I paused it during my second watch today to kind of count the different references that were there, different ships. The Milano's there, the Scrapper jet from Thor Ragnarok, the experimental Quinjet from Captain Marvel's there. It
Did you
looks to
see the
be.
Star Wars TIE Fighter, or not TIE Fighter, or
I,
whatever,
I've
X-Wing?
I see what they are calling out because I didn't see it when my first, and so I was looking at like where people are pointing out it's a stretch.
Yeah,
I see where they could get it, but I think it's kind of a stretch. The Nova Corps Star Blasters there, Grandmaster's Party Buses there, and then the Quantum ship from Ant-Man is there.
right, right.
So
Yeah, it was. There were lots of like just little Easter eggs like that in the background, and of course, later in the fight scene, he pulls up all those weapons, and you see Thor's hammer and Cap's shield and several other elements.
yeah, it looks like Travis is definitely a big fan of Nebula in this. All in the game, in the same way Nebula's voice was less deep and heavy due to the different circumstances with Thanos. So with the Collectors, yeah, it was just that was you're right. Just seeing that hearing the Collector was just like that wasn't what I was expecting to
Right.
hear.
Yeah.
So, what else? What were some of your other favorite moments?
I love the callback to a Ravager never flies solo. He did it initially, and he had to say it a couple times before Yondu shows up, but then he says it at the end again, and Yondu's there for him that time. And I even liked Yondu saying it was something to the effect of like, "Stay away from my kid." Didn't have quite the same emotional impact that Guardians Volume 2 had when Yondu admitting that, he may have been your father, but he's not your daddy. But it was still nice to see that kind of there. I mean, it's not going to have the full impact because they are telling a lot of story in such a short time span, but those are a couple of highlights for me.
Yeah, I like how it becomes, what I mean, even though the Ravagers are doing good in the sense they're trying to acquire, what was it? What was it? The Green Eden's Genesis or something. And it becomes a heist at that point to look at it. But you see when T'Challa, even if he's got to fight, he's not aiming to kill. He's aiming to just take down and make an example out of someone. But he's not aiming to kill if he doesn't have to. But then I love, when he's in the ship and he discovers the Wakandan spaceship, that is a big callback because in our world, do we believe that Wakandans could be space travel? Yeah. But this is also a direct call out to Ta-Nehisi Coates' run on Black Panther in the intergalactic Wakandans.
Yeah, that one's been in the back of my mind. I need to check out that run. I have not read it, and it's like the run I hear about the most.
Mm-hmm. And just hearing, I mean, just you think your family is dead, you think that the nation is destroyed, and then seeing his father has never given up hope of getting his son back, and that confrontation that T'Challa has with Yondu, saying, "Why did you lie to me? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" And Yondu's like, "I saw someone in me that and you weren't it." He said, like, "You wouldn't have been happy down there. You're happier up here."
He wanted to see the world. Yondu gave him the universe.
Mm-hmm. But I loved the fight that they had with the Collector, and the Collector throwing out, he didn't throw Cap shield, but that was Cap shield. You saw Mjolnir. I had an interesting thing. The fact that he had Mjolnir calls something out to me. This says to me that the Collector acquired this before Odin put the spell on it.
It has to be, right? Because
there's no way the Collector is worthy.
Yeah, no way that he's worthy. I mean, I guess I don't know what the requirements are, but it sure to me doesn't seem like he would be worthy.
You got Ronin's hammer, Thanos, half of Thanos' sword, the dagger from Malekith, Hela's helmet with the Necro sword.
That was pretty cool looking. Yeah.
Yeah, I just loved it that he did the same thing that Hela did when.
Yes.
I love Sticky Fingers. It's not as good as Get Help, but I do love Sticky Fingers. I did cringe a little bit when the Collector comes out and he says he took part of the arm from a talkative Cronin, and I was like, oh no, he killed Korg.
Jerk, just a jerk. But luckily, this universe, as we find out, this the Earth in this universe is probably doomed anyway, so whatever. Because Ego has found his son, and Peter Quill working at the Dairy Queen that we saw in Guardians Volume 2, where he's at that. It was that same shot, and he is at the Dairy Queen. You got to wonder if he's franchising with Scott Lang at all.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Wait. Well, maybe he's competing with Scott Lang at Baskin Robbins. You know.
oh, good point. Good point. You're right. That was Baskin Robbins. I don't know. That wasn't Chris Pratt, but I wonder.
That was Kurt Russell though. That was Kurt Russell.
Do you get Kurt Russell just for that one line, or do you think we'll see him again?
I think we're seeing him again. You don't drop a stinger like that, especially when he says that's a story for another time.
Right.
I don't think. I mean, Kurt Russell's kind of a fun guy. He's a Disney alum from being a kid, but I think he's more than just a line at that point because that's what Disney claims that they didn't call back Batista to do one or two lines. So as Bub's saying, funny they could get Kurt Russell but not Chris Pratt. Money comes down to money a lot of times. But I think the really nice scene at the end with Yondu saying, if I had learned anything from watching you, kid, on any planet among any people, there ain't no place in this galaxy you don't belong. Where you want to be, that's the question, isn't it? You're just gonna have to follow your heart on that one, Mr. Star-Lord. That was a really nice little quote there.
It was. And again, just the whole episode just felt like this touching tribute to Chadwick Boseman.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really thankful that he was able and willing to record these before he passed, just so we could get that one final performance.
Oh yeah, and getting them to come back to Wakanda, and even Star-Lord covering for Yondu what really happened. I hope we do see more of this Wakanda now that he's back, or if it's not, great. But I really would love to see kind of where this continues on. How does T'Challa stay there at all, or is he kind of visiting more on and off at that point, seeing and being a son who is Black Panther now, because it doesn't look like it's his dad.
Don't you just kind of want to see Yondu and like the Dora Milaje, like just some crazy interaction? I mean, I bet M'Baku and Yondu would get along pretty well though. They'd
think
party.
So.
They'd party.
Yeah, I'd think so at that point. But yeah, the ending dedicating to him at that point, even the music at the end, the instrumental music was it was somber, and I think it was appropriate. But I also like throughout it, whenever T'Challa was remembering or interacting with Wakanda stuff, you heard the music, you heard what from Black Panther. So that was this episode in general was just very, very good, and definitely out of the two episodes, this one's my favorite. But from what I'm hearing, the third episode is one of the is not in the sense of just outright different from anything else. Like, this is supposedly what's gonna kind of make people really latch onto What If.
Yeah, that's the episode that people have said that, like the reviewers, the people who got the early copies have said they're excited for the rest of us to get to see, and we'll find out. But I like last week. I like this week. I like what it's doing. These fun little side stories, and if they're going to bring all those toys together in the series, all the more power to it.
Exactly. But I think we have you put out a call for questions, but I think we get a question about this week's episode, or tangentially related?
I mean, it's What If related, so I put it with this section from DC Outlaw. If you could get one idea for an episode into the next season of What If, what's your idea? His would be, what if Captain America was not discovered until after Infinity War?
I saw this before we got on, and I came up with one.
Okay.
What if the Avengers never formed?
You know what? That just feels like it could play hand in hand with the one I ultimately settled on.
Okay, go for it.
What if Captain Marvel stayed on the Earth?
All right. I like that.
So I like that her presence could keep them from forming, because Strange Fury probably wouldn't even deal with Tony Stark shenanigans if he's got Carol Danvers in his pocket,
I already hear Travis Snell's what if the Eternals weren't cowards.
No. His is what if the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer released.
Is it really? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's the great thing. I don't this show can go on for tons of different ways, and right now they're kind of latching on to the Infinity Saga, but I cannot wait till we get beyond the Infinity Saga to where they're going to go with it and allow them to kind of stretch the idea of what if further. I mean, an idea could be, right now they're saying we're not going to introduce X-Men, Fantastic, anything new to it, which I like. You can't put the majors in there, but it would be interesting if they introduced kind of a B, C tier one that would eventually come into the MCU proper.
Yeah, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, I don't want my first time seeing them in the MCU to be part of this show. I don't. I want to see proper live action. But there's other characters I wouldn't be opposed to. Like if they wanted to give us something, Travis Snell, what if Ralph Boner's parents never met? That's mine. Man, my goodness. Even when he's not on the show, he gets Ralph Boner mentioned. Yeah. I tell you, he's never mind. I'm not going to say it. But regardless, it I don't know. I'm with like the X-Men Fantastic Four. No, they did have that Star Wars idea that got canned, or not even canned. It never got started. Like they were just told no. Have a little fun with it. What if Marvel and the Star Wars but I've thought for a long time an animated crossover between Marvel and Star Wars, maybe a Lego one, would be just a lot of fun. So yeah. I kind of, it's inevitable. Someday it's going to happen. And I don't need it to be part of like the official main continuity of either franchise, but what if Marvel and Star Wars? That'd be a good time.
I think so. All right. Any last thoughts before we take our first ad break and head into the other kind of main part of this episode?
No, just 2 for 2 as far as I'm concerned. I'm ready for next week.
All right. So, listeners, we're going to take our first ad break. So, as you know, these ads help keep the lights on at the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they can be a bit loud. So, I'm going to give you that 3 count to turn that volume down before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. All right. Well, we were hearing hints left and right, and then we get a whole bunch of magazine ads at that point and a new poster. We're like, all right, well, we know what trailer's dropping this week, and that would be the final trailer. I mean, this is interesting. They have now deemed this the final trailer to Marvel's Eternals.
Doesn't that seem early to be the final trailer? I mean, it comes out November 5th, 78 days, but it feels early to me for them to be calling this the final trailer.
Especially when there's a potential for it to be bumped.
Yes. I don't know. Like, I noticed at the end of the trailer, to jump way to the end, it said in theaters, not only in theaters. There was no only word. And so I'm like, okay, good. They're leaving their options open. Let's just call it trailer number 2. Just call it trailer. I don't know. It's just
I'm calling it.
I'm sure I'm reading too much into it. When I was watching it on the official Marvel Studios YouTube channel, it just caught my eye. Like that caught my eye before anything. Final. That's an odd choice. We're getting the final Eternals trailer, and we still don't have other ones.
We haven't even entered fall yet, and we're calling it final. But you call that like, instead of only in theaters, same thing with Shang-Chi. That's what I thought there was possible potential with Premier Access, and we saw that didn't happen, unfortunately. But all right, so let me cue this up. I'm keeping in my background the cast of this because it's immense. I know I've gotten decent after I've seen this trailer about 3 times now. I've gotten a good handle on the main characters, actors, unless I've seen them before. That's why I'm keeping up the cast list, because it's epic cast. So again, really volumes down, closed captioning is on, but for those just listening on the audio, we'll make descriptions where it is. So we get coming up, Selma Hayek's character, she is playing the Eternal Ajax, and also you see the character Icarus on screen, played by Richard Madden. And basically they're referencing, Ajax is saying that it's been five years ago, Thanos erased half of the population in the universe. and but the people of this planet brought everyone back with a snap of a finger.
So it feels like that to me. Feels like we're probably gonna get a history lesson because they said it,
Mm-hmm.
7,000 years. But the bulk of the story, I think, when we're doing a chronological rewatches, I think we're gonna have this one slotted in after Endgame.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of back and forth, not only from their first arrival, but their influence and where they've been all this time. That for just kind of another brief history of it, the Celestials, who you will see in this frequently, they created the Eternals. The Deviants, who you will also see, are supposedly the people who live underground or the creatures live underground, and they gave humanity, the Celestials, a secret ability to one day get superpowers.
Mm-hmm.
They called it the Celestial gene. So they're saying that in the sudden return of the population led to this thing called the emergence. Now, what do you think this emergence is?
Well, they said it is from the life force of the snap or the blip coming
Mm-hmm.
back. To me, I think it's the thing that draws the deviants out. That's kind of how I took it.
Yeah, I take it like that, but I'll hold off the theory to the end because I want to kind of call
Okay.
out
Okay.
something, a different thing I've been kind of toying with. Um, this scene right here, this seems like something that's happening in the past, possibly. Could this be an idea of? I know there's a lot more vegetation there, but could this be? Would we see the formation of what happened to Atlantis in this movie?
Hmm. I mean, at this point, I'm not. I don't feel like I can
I
ever
think it's
say
too.
never,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't anticipate that. I
Hmm.
mean, there was that line in Endgame, which the writers came out and said wasn't supposed to be a reference to Atlantis, but it totally could.
Hmm.
They could easily retcon that to be. It's not. It's definitely not where my head went. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Each of these Eternals has a power. Ajax's power is healing, and she is also the only one in the comics. They have gender swapped in the comics. It's a he. Obviously, now it's a she. But also, Ajax is the only one who can talk to a celestial.
Mhm.
So I think that's going to play into key in this movie. Icarus, you'll see, can fly and has laser eyes. Because that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
But
I like
let's.
the look of those laser eyes. We see them 2 or 3 times in this,
Mhm.
and to me, it's heat vision. It's all heat
Yeah,
vision. Laser eyes is heat vision, but it looks really cool.
I think this is an origin scene. I think this is how the Eternals get their gifts, but it's a change from the comics because in the comics they were humans that were given these gifts. It looks to be here they are aliens sent to Earth by the Celestials to protect them from the deviants.
Well, I thought they were supposed to basically be offshoots of the same race as the deviants, and
In the comics, yes, this doesn't
yeah,
look like this looks to be quite an offshoot.
yeah, that's the thing. Like we get this shot here that you've got to pause on, and actually, my first thought was like Thanos' Outriders. Like it looks like one of them, like
Yep.
the space dogs, right? And then as you keep going, wings. It's got wings. Are you kidding
Yep.
me? So this thing's fine. So it's definitely not the same thing as the Outriders, but mentioning Thanos, it's worth commenting on. In the comics, he is the offspring of an Eternal and a Deviant.
Yep.
I don't see that kind of pairing among this. So, are there going to be different types of deviants? Is that creature truly like a deviant pet, a deviant animal, if you will?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it would be cool if the Eternals were from Titan and Thanos was a genetic offshoot who felt like an
Yeah,
outcast.
yeah.
Now that I think is definitely a possibility. And here we get Kid Harington playing, I believe, I know the character in the comics eventually call him Black Knight, but Dane Whitman. Now, this is Cersei. She is played by, let me make sure, Gemma Chan. And supposedly, according to Chloe Zhao, even though Ajax is the leader of the Eternals, this story is going to be about Cersei. Cersei and Icarus have been lovers for many thousands upon thousands of years. At this point, this has already been released. Um, they're on the outs, and in the comics, and there looks to be true here. She is now having it falling for Dane Whitman. But he
Mhm.
asked the question that Mr. Snell and a lot of people have been asking, why did you guys help fight Thanos or any of the All Warriors and terrible things? And she says, we were tasked and instructed to not interfere in any human conflicts unless deviants are involved. Good enough for some people? I don't know.
You know, here's the thing. I'm not going to comment on whether or not that's a good reason. It's just they gave you a reason. Like
Yep.
that's the thing. Like
Mhm.
people have said, well, there's got to be a reason. Oh, I'm sure there's. I really haven't seen this, but I'm sure that some people think that reason is dumb. To me, it makes sense. Like the Eternals are like gods to humans. Well, the
Yes.
Celestials are like gods to them, and so they're just quite literally obeying their makers. And
Mhm.
I don't know. To me, it's a fine example. It's a fine reason. The real question will be by the end of this movie, presumably they will be past that. So I wonder why. Like,
Yeah.
what is it about this storyline? Because you got to think we're going to at least see some of the Eternals in future movies where deviants aren't the primary antagonist.
Yeah, and we get to look at it. One of the Celestials, I think. I can't remember the name of this particular Celestial, I think, but this is supposed to be the leader of the Celestials. The name escapes me.
Just some cool Jack Kirby style designs,
Yep.
He creates this race of like godlike beings, and then suddenly here we are. Nobody's ever
Yep.
heard of them. Nobody, the public doesn't know them, but we're getting a movie.
So they got 7 days, which also calls back God created in many circles, the Christian circles, God created the earth in 7 days. They have 7 days in order to quote unquote save the earth. So they got to get the team back together, which is a big part of Neil Gaiman's run on the Eternals. Right here, we see another one of our Eternals. This is Druig, and Druig is played by Barry Conahan. He has the ability to mess with people's minds, so he's kind of our what is it? Probably our I wouldn't say villain, but definitely an antagonist.
Yeah, from what I know about him, I don't really see him. By the end of the movie, I think he's on the outs with the rest of them.
Yeah, this is also another one, Sprite, played by. Let me make sure. Sprite is played by Leah McHugh. And then we've got Angelina Jolie playing Thena, and she is facing down against Gilgamesh, played by Mao Dung Sik. And Thena's ability is to turn energy into weapons. So they're kind of sparring off here.
Yeah, a little Green Lantern like looking to me.
Yeah.
Just like forming these constructs, and that's okay. I mean, Yellow, she's obviously in the Sinestro Corps, but whatever.
All right. We also have here, it was already put in there earlier, but we get another one. Fastos, played by Brian Tyree Henry. He has the ability to invent things from the energy. At that point, he's an inventor. Right here, we have, I believe this character's name is Mockery. I want to make sure. Malachi.
Oh, I have to look it up.
Yep. Okay. Makari, excuse me, Makari, played by Lauren Ridloff. She is a deaf actress. Basically, has the ability to speed. She does not necessarily like being on Earth with humanity, and uses her speed to steal things and goes back to the ship or goes back to some hideout. And as you'll see coming up, just reading all the stuff that is stolen. And here's what we were wondering where it was coming from the Academy Award winning director, Chloe Zhao.
Oh, look, they did include it. They're
They
not
did.
hiding it. Funny how that works.
Yep. So more stuff from the past. Cersei has the ability to graphemization, basically kind of changing matter. So that's where the truck's not going to smash Kit Harington. You see Camilla Johnny playing the character of Kingo.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what he does with it.
I believe this is another example of a celestial.
Yeah.
What the celestial is doing, forming what, we don't know.
I like the look of these deviants. I don't necessarily want them to just all be space dogs. Like, yeah, show me some other versions, forms, but the ones they have showed us, I like the look of them.
Yeah, and this is Thena. This is very, I don't know, keeping double clicking it, but looks to be a deviant, but also in the comics,
Right.
Thena also fell in love with a deviant in the comics. So this could be kind of paying homage to that.
Yeah, and that's what I wondered if that guy's going to end up being one as well.
Mhm.
Probably is the case.
And like every Marvel movie, we'll get a little humor in this. You know, built a perfect safe house. This is made vibranium. Nope.
Nope.
IKEA fall collection.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty good joke.
Yeah.
I saw so much praise towards this trailer. Like this one seems to have really done its job at winning over the people on the fence about whether or not they're going to see it. There's definitely a lot of hype around this
Mhm.
trailer today.
There's definitely it was very interesting because this is one that I was surprised at how much, especially with this trailer, got people say, "Okay, now I'm excited." I was like, I'm still surprised that a lot of people are really like gaining for this movie. I still think it's got a little bit longer way to go with the general audience, but it gave a little bit more with this story. But my theory, if it's not awakening the deviants, this could be awakening a celestial on Earth, and the celestial is supposed to be the one in the comics. The Eternals are there, and at some point, the celestial comes and judges whether they are fit to survive or not.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I could definitely see that being the case. Wake up a sleeping celestial.
That could be
That would be
that could be the
interesting.
emergence. You
Yeah,
know.
that could come out of it from the blip that caused the emergence, which maybe that's not triggering the deviants, maybe it's triggering the celestial.
Mhm. On the game saying can easily see personality, less CGI, tentacled space dogs as a potential issue. Hopefully, more of Crow and less of them.
I think there's going to be quite a few of them in there.
Yeah.
Like when you have as many people as the Eternals, you have an ensemble that large. That type of monster to face down at some point is good for the third act, and so there definitely is going to be some space dogs. I
Yeah.
want to know who their master is.
Yeah, and like you said, could be Crow, as all in the game
Mhm.
said. That's what many people are saying. That's who Thena is with at the end. So this is going to be the final full trailer. Again, as we said, that's surprising. We'll probably, as we get closer, if that date holds, if they're able to do it, we'll see probably a few more TV ads. But I've been good enough to avoid. I purposely have avoided the Shang-Chi ones that have come out. I don't need to see any
Sure.
more of them.
No,
So
no, you're too close.
yep. But yeah, again, I hope it holds the date. I hope it gets premiere access. We'll see what happens with that. But again, they have my money, and I think this is going to be another good thing for Marvel to reach down to a property. Kevin Feige has said this movie does not come out without Chloe Zhao's pitch, and they have constantly praised what she's done with this movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's that narrative that they don't listen to
Yeah.
the directors, but then you just keep hearing about how the directors made their pitches, be that for Loki or WandaVision or the Eternals. And like, great, I'm glad she pitched it. It's different. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be pretty interesting to see. I see we got a question regarding the Eternals from John Hazelton.
Yeah, so he said Thanos' relationship to the basically what is the Thanos relationship to the Eternals and the Deviants? I know they're related in the comic, but I don't see the MCU going that route. What do you guys think? Like we said earlier, he is half of each. He is the offspring of an Eternal and a Deviant. Um, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we did get a little Thanos cameo in this movie. And so,
Mhm.
do I think they're going to go like heavy into that? Probably not. But somewhere in the past, or this trailer opens with them talking about Thanos. Somewhere in that conversation, a line, "He's one of us," or he's one of us. He's not one of us. He's partially one. Something like that.
Yeah,
I could see them going into, but I don't. I don't see them going too deep with it. I don't want to say never. Maybe down the line in the future, but right now, I don't really see it.
yeah. There was a tour going around the country, and I know it definitely. I think I want to say it definitely stopped in Canada at one point too. That particularly called out Thanos being of celestial and or eternal deviant origins in this
Mhm.
tour. With looking at the costumes, the artifacts, and things like that. So, and this was official Marvel Studios tour. putting this out there. So I think it's a good bet to say that Thanos is a relation to, in some way, a lineage from the Eternals, Deviants, or both at the same time.
Yeah, I will be genuinely surprised if there's no acknowledgement of that connection.
So, but all right. So if you haven't checked out the trailer, make sure you check that out, and we'll see if November 7th or 5th.
November 5th.
Okay, good. Okay, so I already know what I'm getting Aaron for her birthday. We're both gonna go see Eternals if we're lucky.
Is that like getting your wife a bowling ball because you want a bowling ball?
No, no, well, kind of in the sense, but I'll take her to a really, really nice dinner that she wants to go to at that point. That way we both win.
There you go. There you go. It's important for you both to win on her birthday. Got it.
Yes,
Nailed it.
very
Nailed
important.
it. Discussion's over.
Discussion's over. All right. So we had a premiere this week. I know you didn't go to the big premiere,
No,
but
no, I did not.
but they had the world premiere of Shang-Chi on Monday night in LA. So got a lot of different news items for this, but I found the most interesting one was Kevin Feige kind of addressing what has been deemed kind of the controversies surrounding Shang-Chi in China and just what it is. So this was an interview by YouTube with Sino Weibo, a Chinese microblogging website, and Marvel Studios President Kevin Feige answered a number of questions regarding Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings and surrounding controversies of the film in China. One of the controversies that the Chinese audience concerned is Shang-Chi's connection to the racist caricature of Fu Manchu, who in the comics was his father. And Kevin Feige responded to that concern by saying, that is one of the truths about the early comic books, that Fu Manchu was part of that story in the early comics. Fu Manchu is not a Marvel character. Fu Manchu is not a character we own or would ever want to own. And that was changed in the comics many, many years ago, and we never had any intention of doing that in this movie. Fu Manchu is not in this movie in any way, shape, or form. He continues on and says, I think it is important for people to know that and understand that when they see this movie, they will certainly be by proof, but that is such a offensive figure that was never anything and had anything of interest in doing. So that's not a surprising statement.
No, you can't do Fu Manchu. No, absolutely not. That would never, even if they had the character, I genuinely don't think they would ever even begin to touch that.
Mm-hmm. I said one aspect of the film Feige is looking forward to is fans seeing themselves in Shang-Chi. He said, we want heroes that look like all of our fans from around the world and heroes of our fans that can look up and feel the wish fulfillment to want to be a part of it. And it's about inviting people into our world, not keeping people out of it or keeping some people separate from it. A lot of times we throw around this term like this is big for the Asian community, and we have to be careful with that necessarily as well, because the Asian community represents a huge group of, it's not just Chinese, it is not just Japanese, it is a huge grouping of, Filipinos. It encompasses so many different ethnicities. So, I know I've been guilty of it a couple times on the show saying that. And, I want to make sure that, our listeners understand that when we say those things, we got to be careful with how it's carried at that point. It's definitely, it's going to be possibly for some a big moment, but others in the Asian community, and they'll get into this later in this interview, that some aren't looking at this as a positive. This is not something that some people in some parts of the Asian community look up to. Oh, I want to be like this. This is not what some look up to.
Sure. And I would encourage listeners to, and this has happened recently, to give us that feedback when we do use the wrong terminology. Yeah, I would like to know because I don't honestly know what the right terminology or what I should be saying. I typically just refer to it as people that don't look like me.
Yeah.
And but I appreciate being corrected and educated on those issues.
The interview continued on by saying we've already addressed the Fu Manchu. The character, the father in the movie, is an entirely new creation. The name of his father is Wen Wu. The Mandarin, we're assuming it's the Mandarin, but the father's name is Wen Wu, played by one of the great actors, Tony Leung. He says that, and that's what really sets this movie apart from any characters from any other movies, is that this is a very unique character that you can almost not even call a villain. This is a story of love between a father and son, but misunderstanding and conflict and that's what we're very anxious people about to see in this movie between the two films. And without getting into too many spoilers, does this seem kind of an accurate description from Feige?
Yes, I will say it's a good description.
And then the last thing they get into is one of the other concerns in the interview was that Shang-Chi is abandoning his Chinese roots in lieu of Western culture. Feige says, as with all of our Marvel Cinematic Universe films, we often change stories from the comics. That's certainly one of the elements that we've changed. There is a conflict between them. What this movie is about is a hero who did have a conflict with his father and his father's legacy as he was growing up and wanted to run from that. The movie is about him returning to it and learning the deeper truth about what happened, and he was a child and who his father really is. So it's interesting just because you definitely see that during the trailers. This is definitely a battle between father and son, and what it's very obvious. That's another thing that some in the community are not too high up on about this film, is it looks like, oh, you're favoring Western ideals versus this. And even though Feige, okay, that's one point of view, people say, yeah, but he's still turning his back on his culture, his roots.
Yeah, in which case, frankly, I don't feel qualified to comment on that.
No, neither do I.
If I would be curious to hear from people who feel that way after they've seen the movie, if they still feel that way. Yeah. Like, I would be very interested to hear about that.
Yeah, and we've said before, this is a movie that right now I don't think it has a release date in China. They've continued on a blackout from anything not of their film, not of Chinese made films at that point. Again, this is, people say, oh, people should be excited about this in China. I was like, well, no, they have their own films. This is like, they're not excited about an American portrayal of, Chinese culture.
Right. Right.
So that's also, so again, it's going to be interesting. We said it before. It's unfortunate when this movie is coming out and how it's coming out, but we'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I still think ultimately fewer people are going to see it than would have if they were doing premiere access, but we've definitely made that known that that's where we fall with it. Hopefully people show up for it.
Yeah. So, all right, before we continue on with the news, we're going to take our second ad break. So again, listeners, these ads help keep the lights on in the Geek Ultimate Alliance network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they can be a bit loud. So I want to give you that 3 count to turn that volume down before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. All right, so we're going to continue on with Shang-Chi. There's always been the debate, and well, unfortunately, I didn't win this one. I had called out that my theory was this movie was going to take place during the blip and during the snap at that point, looking at the in-between times. But the director has responded in an interview in Fandango, basically saying that Shang-Chi is set in the present day in the MCU timeline. It was post-snap, and the question was it post-snap? He agreed. Fandango later clarified the edit of the article, changing from post-snap to post-blip, since that's what they're calling it at that point, post-blip. So confirming it takes place after Avengers Endgame. So it doesn't mean that we basically have seen, we're going to see some origins of this in this movie in background, but the bulk of this movie looks to be taking place in present day MCU. Where in the present day MCU, they usually wait till the weekend to properly place these new titles in the timeline. So do you feel that after watching it once that you have an idea where this takes place?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you know where it is. I mean, they tell us here it's post blip, right?
Yeah.
To me, post blip is a pretty wide range because
Yes, right now.
WandaVision is post blip, Falcon Winter Soldier is post blip, Far From Home is post blip. So where is it all exactly? I mean, we'll find out. But regardless, I want to see ultimately where they slot it in on the timeline in Disney Plus. But I do want that movie in that timeline. In that movie, between the snap and the blip, I do want to see a movie there. Having seen this one, am I disappointed? No, I'm not disappointed with its placement, but I would very much like to see a movie in that timeline. That's 5 years of unexplored potential. A movie story. Here's your what if. Give me a what if story set in that time. You know, even though it wouldn't be the main continuity, fine. I'm still interested in how the heroes who survived dealt during that 5 times. We've got glimpses. I would like to see more.
Yeah. On the game, bringing back before the ad break, saying was also reported that some in China thought Simu and Aquafina were too ugly to be in their roles. You say ridiculous if true. Again, that's in the eye of the beholder. You know,
I remember those reports. I do remember those reports where too ugly. Yeah.
I can't I can't comment necessarily on that. Again, it's I would need to understand a little bit more of like what do they mean by that? Is it because of what they're doing, how they're carrying their careers at that point, or is it just like the beauty itself or the handsomeness themselves is the issue? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I'll just say that.
Again, yeah, it's just one of those things. So we'll see in a couple of weeks what more stories come out, but we got a big story. BD himself from comicbook.com broke a story during his interview with Kevin Feige. We got some Black Panther news and some Ironheart news. And the news is that Dominique Thorne's Riri Williams Ironheart is to debut in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So, an interview with Brandon Davis from comicbook.com, Kevin Feige said that we're shooting Black Panther Wakanda Forever right now, and the character of Riri Williams, you will meet her in Black Panther 2 first. And she started shooting, I think, this week before her Ironheart series. So not only is she shooting her role or almost done with her roles in Black Panther 2, but getting ready, we've now got confirmed that Ironheart is getting ready to start filming.
Yeah, and I found out about this news from looking at our show notes. So thanks for including that. That's awesome. Ironheart's going to get we're going to see her in, I guess, the movie before we see her in her TV show, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the opposite of Ms. Marvel and Monica Rambeau, where we see them on TV first and then the movies.
Yeah, the character in the comics, Riri Williams, was introduced after Iron Man's death, where she used her intelligence and access at MIT to build her own suit. Now, it was interesting. The day before this story came out, so if you're listening to this audio, so this Wednesday, this was before it was confirmed by Brandon Davis interviewing Feige, an internet blogger, a Twitter handle at Miss Lizzie Hill over at the Cosmic Circle actually confirmed this information via her Twitter and posting. I didn't write a huge article revealing that her sources, she felt confident at the time that Riri Williams was set to appear at Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So definitely check out her stuff. She's been breaking some stuff, some growing levels of scooping at that point at the Cosmic Circle. Definitely want to call that out, but it's not, and we don't want to insinuate that Brandon Davis told a scoop. No, he interviewed Feige. Feige directly confirmed it. Her sources gave her that at that point. I applaud them both for getting this information. Getting anything out of Feige is of this nature is impressive itself.
Yeah.
You brought up a good point that we heard about this casting very early, and this kind of now makes sense why.
Yep. Because at was it the Disney Investor Day when during the Marvel segment they announced the show and that they had already cast someone, and that's unusual to say the least.
So yeah, I think there looks to be some filming going on at MIT and Cambridge. So it looks to be they're using that to continue influencing the comics. So do you think? And again, this is pure. Let's get speculation at that point. Will we see anything of Ironheart, her building the suit in this?
I don't know, maybe incorporating a little Wakandan science, maybe a little Shuri hooks her up with some vibranium, maybe working on the suit with Shuri a little bit.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what they do there because this isn't a connection that I expected. And I don't know a lot about her in the comics, so maybe there's a comics connection I'm unaware of, but it's just not eventually, sure, I would expect it, but right out of the gate, no, I didn't expect that fast.
Yeah, I mean, she in the character Riri Williams is not Wakandan, but doesn't mean that they're making her Wakandan. They could be at that point, but she's not Wakandan in the comics. But I'm fine if they decide to kind of pull that. And I kind of said when the story came out, it said maybe it's Shuri's protege.
Ooh, I like that idea. Shuri having a protege, I like that a
Yeah.
lot.
It just seems like just because of just how intelligent Riri is in the comics, and Shuri is, I think they've said it before. She's smarter than Tony Stark. Very easily.
I'm on Team Shuri when that debate comes up. Yes.
Yes. But yeah, so yeah, that was a nice bit of news that dropped late today on Thursday at that point. So wanted to sneak that into the stories, and then we got this was after the show dropped last week. We got a leak of supposedly the Moon Knight suit had leaked online. We're not going to show it here. What I will do is show kind of what it looks very clearly an homage to in the comics. But yeah, the leak, it is unconfirmed, but most, if not all, anyone who has posted it and has carried it has been taken down. That's why one of the reasons we're not going to show it at that point. But it's very much in the leagues of has stark white eyes, the moon symbol, forehead, kind of very much kind of almost like mummy-like in that sense. So let me kind of pull out what and share the screen of what I'm the closest thing I can get to without putting that image on there.
Well, while you're doing that, I will tell you, I think this suit looks great. I have no complaints about it at all. It to me, like, it doesn't look like a finished shot.
No, it definitely doesn't.
I'm like, if this is not the finished shot and it already looks as cool, I don't anticipate having any complaints at all about Moon Knight's costume.
Yeah, for those of you not watching, again, this is definitely from one of the covers of David Fincher's run, doing the artwork for Moon Knight. It was definitely the cover. Travis Snell showed it on Geekverse when he talked about it at that point. It's the cover of the standard edition omnibus. It's definitely not the sleek one. It's definitely a first run at it. And I think that this is a character that is not just going to be a one season kind of episode. We're going to be seeing a lot of Moon Knight, so there's definitely open for refinement of the costume.
Hopefully we'll get that cape. I do want to see the cape.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the moon, the crescent moon. So
right.
So yeah, so I'm sure you can definitely find it. I've seen other places that have been able to, if you didn't get to see it, Google it. Someone has it somewhere at that point. It's not totally disappeared from the internet, but you definitely can't find it on Twitter anymore. I'm more impressed by how long it lasted on Twitter. That's what I was impressed by.
Yeah, I quickly texted a picture of it so I could pull it back up to look later. But it's as soon as I started, really, I was questioning the legitimacy until I started hearing it was getting taken down. And then I'm like, all right, that pretty much seals the deal.
Yep. When you start taking stuff down, it's just like, all right, well, you basically got scooped. And then there was another scooper, I think the day or two later, supposedly showing an action shot of it. I'm not saying it wasn't Moon Knight jumping, but I really couldn't tell much outside of it. Someone leaping really, really high.
It was too far away to actually tell who it was.
Yep. So all in the game saying apparently Oscar Isaac just bumped into Ethan Hawke in the neighborhood bar and asked him if he wanted to be in the show. Yeah, I heard that story. That's how Ethan Hawke got on the show. I want to bump into Oscar Isaac too.
So, something tells me he wouldn't have offered you the part.
Crushing dreams left and right, Brent. Crushing dreams twice now. All right, so the last story we got tonight is we've got some Secret Wars, some maybe confirmation that it's heading to the MCU, this storyline. The writer Jim Shooter, from a report from Comic Book Resource, Jim Shooter was the writer of Marvel's original Secret Wars event, and he says that Marvel Studios is developing a live action adaptation of the project. He was a guest at the MegaCon convention where he was asked about the possibility of a Secret Wars heading to the MCU. While discussing how a quote unquote money clown called him to offer $10,000 to write a novelization of Secret Wars, Shooter revealed that Marvel Studios attempted to secure the rights to the storyline. He said, I quote, this one clown called me from Marvel, Shooter said. He wasn't an editor, but some executive property management, which was a little odd. He said he asked me if I wanted to write a novelization of Secret Wars. Shooter then claims that he was sent a retroactive work for hire contract, which he ended up turning down. The writer later said that the previous employee's boss, David Bogart, called to later apologize with the previous interaction and offered him a new retroactive offer for $10,000. Though Shooter initially declined since he was fully aware of his previous contract for work for hire, Shooter then stated that Marvel didn't have a piece of paper that said the company owned the Beyonder, Titania, Spider-Woman, Spider-Man's black costume, or any other Secret Wars characters. He added that the Marvel didn't have to retroactively pay him to use the characters, though Bogart insisted you take the money, dummy, which he ended up doing. And he ended this by saying, Shooter said to Bogart, this means you're making the movie, right? Bogart supposedly said, I'm not allowed to tell you that. And Shooter said, well, I just think you did.
You know, the Russos have been talking about this movie since Endgame basically came out, and I don't think anyone's surprised to hear that they're starting the early. They're moving the ball forward. They're slowly starting that rolling. Yeah, I'm interested in it. My question to you: would you want the Russos back for it to direct the next big, massive event, or would you rather hear from a new voice?
I'm part of me just knowing what they were able to do, and the Russos have gone on record when they said, would there be any other Marvel project that would get them back to take over the helm and do one more ride? This was it. They both said Secret Wars would be the project. Would Marvel do it? Oh, in a heartbeat. They've got the they can write their own ticket at that point. It's if to do this right, and this is more leaning towards not the original Secret Wars, this is more leaning towards Hickman's Secret Wars, where Multiverse was the bigger issue, not necessarily the Beyonder. Not saying the Beyonder can't be a part of it, but not the way Marvel's heading to it. It'd be interesting to see who would be. I don't see them getting a first-time director to do this big event. The Russos weren't for them. Russos basically had two movies under their belt.
Yeah, no, I don't necessarily mean new, like a brand new director, just
no, I know,
maybe new to the MCU.
Yeah. All in Games got only if Marcus and McFeely would return as well. Yeah. Could be interesting.
Yes. Yes, please. I'd be very excited with that team.
Yeah.
Marcus and McFeely writing, the Russos directing. I'm totally game for it, considering I think they've directed the best comic book movies out there. Yeah, I'm not going to be opposed to that. At the same time, I also wouldn't blame Marvel if they wanted to go a different route because they did their massive epic. And I wouldn't even blame the Russos if when it came time to it, they didn't want to do another one because they didn't want to, like their legacy for comic book movies is cemented. And maybe even in their own mind, they wouldn't want to risk tarnishing it somehow. Maybe that's not a concern, but in general.
Well, especially because oh my God, Endgame is thought of as that is their opus to what they've done in the MCU. So everything's going to be it wasn't as good as Endgame or, so I'm fine. I like that they say they would like to come back. Do I think they will? I'm under 50% on that one. I'm probably 30-35% chance at that point, because again, to your point, if the Marvel Studios has gone on record that they're not going to have these big contracts anymore, and they're going to kind of curtail in the sense of how much they're spending. Well, the Russos can definitely bring a pretty hefty price tag with the credibility to back it up. So, are they willing to do this? I would say they would be if it was right, but I definitely think that they want to. Marvel's done a good job is bringing on either directors on the rise or the ones that they feel like have a vision, that have a name attached to it, but haven't been given a project like this.
Yeah, and I guess for me, it comes down to, you know the Russos can handle the ensemble that the size the cast would have to be, because
Mhm.
3 of their movies was a large ensemble. So I'm honestly game for it either way. I would love, though, selfishly at some point for another Russo's brother directed movie, even if they just wanted to do something smaller, something, not that any of them are easy, but relatively easier, something with that takes up less of their time, smaller
Mhm.
shoot, things like that. I would definitely be interested in them coming back someday, and I hope they do. But I also at the same time totally understand if they don't.
And all in the games is let's see how that big budget the gray man turns out after cherry flop. Yeah, true.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yep. All right, so that is all the news for this week. I know some stuff was dropping with Feige doing interviews, so the next couple of weeks or so we'll probably get some more, little hints of the future of the MCU at that point. I'm we'll just say, guess what? Feige said, he did say, wait for it, fans, wait for it, listeners. That when the Spider-Man trailer is going to come out. Feige said before the movie, there will
That's
be a
right.
trailer before the movie. So breaking news.
I think they're actually going to play it at the movie. That'll be one of the trailers you see.
Oh, you couldn't help yourself, could you?
No, not
Nope.
usually.
All right, so let us head into some of the. I think we kind of all the. Did we get any listener questions?
It
Outside of
was
the ones.
all related to the
Okay,
other specific topics.
gotcha. All right, so we've covered those. So let me pull up the fact or fictions from last week. All right. All right, so last week, these were mine. So the first one, in addition to Werewolf by Night, we will see one more Midnight Sun either reference or make a cameo in Moon Knight. And I say parentheses besides Blade. 89% say fact, 11% said fiction. So pretty high up on that one. By the end of Phase 5, we will have the MCU theatrical movie that introduces a new character or team that was not in the MCU canon before. 78% said fact, 22% said fiction. So pretty high up on that one. And this was kind of surprising because I thought it was going to go the opposite way. Number 3, the Endgame level event that closes out the 3 phases will have not one but 2 major villains teaming up, King the Conqueror and Doctor Doom. And I put in parentheses, doesn't mean they won't betray each other. 53% said fact, 47% said fiction. So, close to 50-50 tie on that one. I was kind of surprised. I thought that was going to weigh heavily in the fiction, but I guess some people like the idea.
Yep. I mean, yeah, I don't know what more there is to say about it. It definitely did not go necessarily the way I thought it was going to.
All in the Game's got a last minute question. He says, curious as to why writers for F4 haven't been named with John Watts as director. Can't be that far fetched to assume that McKenna and Summers, who wrote the Spidey trilogy movies, will be involved.
I mean, they still have some time on that because we know who the director is. And again, that's why I am convinced that there will be something in Spider-Man alluding to the FF. But they have some time before that kind of stuff needs to be announced and come out. I think that's a really it tracks that Marvel has done that, especially with the aforementioned Marcus and McFeely and the Russos of pairing them up across multiple projects for several movies. And based on Homecoming, based on Far From Home, I would not be upset if that was the case.
Yeah. So, all right, hit me with some fact or fictions.
All right, we're looking ahead a bit on these. We're going to start off with Kang will not be in Doctor Strange 2, not counting credit scenes.
I say fiction. I can definitely see the possibility of him not being there, but as the fact that he was in Loki and the next confirmed case we see him is Ant-Man and Quantumania, which isn't until 2023. I think that is a big gap for us not to see Kang at that point. So I think that since that movie is scheduled to come out next year, I think at the very least we'll see him once next year, and that would be Doctor Strange 2.
Ultimately, I agree. I'll say fiction on it. I'm going to modify it though it's not going to change your answer to say Jonathan Majors will not be in because I want to account for variance or whatever, just in case we get another He Who Remains who's not technically Kang.
Yeah, it's okay.
Jonathan Majors will not be in Doctor Strange 2.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It doesn't change my answer. So,
All right, next up, we're going to look at Phase 5. Phase 5 will have a Disney Plus series starring a villain, not counting Loki season 2.
Well, I mean the idea of the Thunderbolts are still out there, but just even the idea of a villain focused MCU movie, I think that MCU, particularly in this phase, has shown to be, trying to do some different things, some things that outside of the quote unquote norm that they did originally. I would like to see them do that. So I say fact.
Right now, I'm gonna say facts, but it's close for me because I don't see any existing villains getting that treatment. So I think it'd have to be somebody new.
Yeah.
But could you imagine a Jonathan Majors led King miniseries? That'd be fun.
That would be interesting. I know they just released a new mini series from Marvel this past week on Kang. So
I'll have to check that out in 3 months. All in the Game said should be one involving Doctor Doom. That is the one that I first thought of. That is the one that it seems like everybody wants to happen. We want that, like so many people want that Doctor Doom solo project before running him into the Fantastic Four. I don't know if they're going to do it, but it would certainly it would capture my attention.
Yeah, it would be interesting just to see even the hero of his own story. So
all right, final one. Alpha Flight will be featured in Phase 5.
Just featured.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, this is actually a tough one for me because I'm of the camp that I don't see Wolverine being in the first X-Men team up movie, which I've been very much vocal on that Phase 5 is going to be where we get the introduction of the mutants. I'll say fact, but it's a very, very like 51% fact just because I could see a reference to a mutant team in Canada.
Sure.
And just or a mutant grouping in Canada at that point, even if they don't use the words Alpha Flight, us fans will be like, okay, that's Alpha Flight.
Yeah, well, we would know it when we saw it.
Yeah.
Oh, look,
Yep.
It's Puck and Sasquatch and Vindicator or whatever.
Yeah.
It's all the Alpha Flight people. Well, that's Alpha Flight.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and say fiction. I wouldn't say we'll never see them. I just don't think it'll be quite that soon. But I do think it would be fun to dive into Logan, to Wolverine's past with them.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it'd be really interesting to have an Alpha Flight project that introduced Wolverine and then spin him off into the X-Men.
I think Travis Noah had that when we were in the early days of the show, bringing up that idea.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Hear that, Travis? You actually got a compliment from Brent.
You did. Yeah, all this talk. He's ridiculous. But regardless, he's trying to rope me into his nonsense he does with Clay. I'm not having any part of it.
Well, all right, listeners, I will post those on Sunday afternoon and give you a couple of days to vote on them. And so, yeah, I will be up next week. And all right, let's close out the show with continuing our comic book club with Age of X. So the 2 issues we had this week was New Mutants number 23 and a kind of a limited series within a limited. Yeah.
I read that. I'm like, Age of X, isn't that what this is? Oh no, it's different. Okay.
Yeah. I would say out of the 2, I really liked the Age of X universe more than the issue of New Mutants.
I think I would agree if I were ranking them, but I actually quite enjoyed both of them. Seeing Magneto, he's working with Legacy. Like everyone thinks he's killed her and killed Gambit. No, he's trying to use them. I was really interested in that. That said, I guess if I'm being honest, when I got to the final page, it was the Age of X universe that made me want to read the next one. Like the most. So I'm with you there. It's kind of fun in these events with these alternate X-Men to see like the alternate Avengers at the same time.
And especially, in comparison to where we read like Loki Agent of Asgard, where the problem we had with that was when other events were trying to force their way into that series and it just didn't land. Well, this one is very self-contained story within the X-Men universe that's really not having any other kind of influences. I agree. I thought it was interesting just kind of seeing where Magneto was, that he was the one to let Kitty go out there and see what's going on. This whole idea of like Kitty is continually saying there's nothing out there. There's this idea and this whole discovery. Um, you know, Professor Xavier is woken up, but they're not understanding. Not even Eric is understanding. But then they discover the universe is in a box.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure what that means exactly, but I mean, they've got my attention. They're doing what a lot of these alternate X-Men universes. It seems like this is the first one when it's like, oh, they find Professor X and realize that his powers have basically kept the memories of what the real world was. Mm-hmm. So I kind of see that route going. I wanted to mention on the Age of X universe, Sue Storm and the Hulk, I really like the differences there. Like she's got her falling out with the rest of the Fantastic Four, and Hulk just visually, I think, looks really, really interesting as he's got like that mutant DNA mixed in with him.
Yeah, that was a cool way of how like altering how the Hulk came about with Bruce Banner and his immense hatred for mutants. Tony Stark being infected with the techno-organic virus, so he has basically become more machine. Captain America, and I mean, I don't think it's not Steve, but it's it's rather interesting. We got Johnny Blaze, we get Ghost Rider randomly in this whole thing. General Castle, Frank Castle, is kind of the one in charge of this team and hunting down where the mutants ended up. What did you think of that look for the mutant that was leading him there? Because that was kind of jarring of a look of Sabretooth.
Yeah, it is. Not my favorite, if I'm going to be honest. Something to do with the, I don't know, what do you call it? Tusk, almost like.
Well, they basically just took out his chin, and that was the adamantium for his teeth, his saber tooth.
I mean, they basically gave him Tusk. It's like not my favorite look for him, but it's interesting. It's different. Would I like to see him throw down with Wolverine? Part of me says yes. Part of me says no, because Wolverine wouldn't survive right now without his healing factor. But
true.
It's just this whole issue. I mean, Captain America's costume is a bit different, and he's got a shield. You commented on the tech virus with Iron Man. It is fun just to see these characters look a little bit different and just how they act. But when I saw Sabretooth at first, I thought it was Wild Child. Like I've seen Wild Child in those kind of scenarios, and at first that's where my head went.
And Jessica Drew basically being the silent assassin in this one.
I thought she was a Black Widow.
Well, I mean, the symbol on her chest basically looks it.
Right. Which is what I was like, okay. And then they called her Jessica Drew. Like, well, I did not expect that, but okay, I'm here. Let's just keep rolling.
We'll run with it. What did you think of, who knew we were going to get a Spider-Man centric story in this? What did you think about that?
So the story was fine. My one little hang up I would have is, and this tends to happen with Spider-Man. We're talking about an alternate reality. Let's have a different Spider-Man. He felt really similar to the mainline continuity Spider-Man, and maybe that goes into the whole nature versus nurture debate. But even his costume is the same. This is an opportunity to show us a different take on the character. I would have preferred that. I liked it. I just would have preferred it to have not been such a normal Spider-Man story.
Yeah, and I think it was a nice way of bringing in the idea that, okay, now once they turned on the mutants, they basically have turned on, the humans have turned on anyone superpowered.
Right. And of course, so Mary Jane's pregnant, so her kid would presumably be considered a mutant. So, I mean, he's a mutate, but his offspring, if they have powers, technically a mutant.
Yep. So, ends up being captured. She's trying to fly away and says, I'll see you soon, Tiger. So I don't know if we're going to see a continuation of the story. We'll have to see in 2 issues.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll find out.
Oh, well. All right. And, but yeah, so we'll see next week. So next week, the issues are X-Men Legacy number 247 and New Mutants number 24. And so we're getting ready. I think we've got 6 more issues, including these 2 next week. So, it's our pick. So you and I have got to talk to see what we want to go down to in a couple of weeks.
Wow, you're right. We already are getting close to that, aren't we?
Yep. All right. So volume 63 in the books. So again, big week for everyone. Like I said, it's been it's been tiring at work, but it's always fun to geek out on the show and see all the fun's going on Marvel. And again, sharing in your having a little bit of jealousy, but sharing in your good fortune of Shang-Chi. So
I told my wife it's weird. I'm used to being able to see it again the next day, and I'm like, well, I'm just waiting to go see it again. But it is a problem I'm very thankful to have.
yes. So all right. Well, why don't you tell people how they can follow you and plug your shows?
Sure. Fans Without Borders is the other podcast I'm a part of, and I'm on Twitter at Brentak Prime. And feel free to reach out. My DMs are open. I'm crazy that way.
As am I as well. Appreciate the fans always reaching out to me at that point. And first, want to say again, thank you to our sponsor, organicpricebooks.com. Again, use that code MarvelGUA at checkout for $2 off every single order. We appreciate them being a sponsor. You can follow the show on Twitter at Marvel A Podcast and me personally at Chris Balga. You can email the show at marvelalliancepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GUA Pod Network. Feel free to tweet, email if you want to provide feedback, ask questions, have us answer on the Ask Factor Fictions, answer questions on the show. We appreciate that. Continue to rate and review the on Apple Podcasts, whichever platform or choice may be. Thank you all who joined us in the chat tonight. We appreciate it. Thank you all for listening out there in the audio world. Stay safe out there, everyone. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers. All right, Brent. So, Feige dropped a lot of news. I figured for our post credits, maybe delve into kind of just a little thing that he had to say for one of these interviews today. And he got interviewed by Collider. And they directly asked him, when's Avengers 5 going to happen? And this is what he said. He said, I think we want to be a reasonable amount of time from Endgame to start a new saga, which is already underway and already started. And then you need time, as he did in phase 1, to build that saga before you bring everyone together. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, it makes sense. I don't know if I've completely... It's weird. I don't want to disagree with him about like this kind of thing because what do I know? But I feel like I don't agree because with phase 1, like you are introducing everything from the ground floor. You're introducing the characters, the universe, connective tissues. You're building and slowly easing the audience into the idea of, hey, these movies are all going to be tied to each other. So if you want the partial story, you're good. If you want the full story, you need to see all of them. And I'm like, at this point, the audience is already trained for that. We already know. And so far, anyway, up until Shang-Chi here in a couple of weeks, all the characters we're getting are not introducing brand new characters the way they were through all of phase 1. So I'm with them on the whole, like, a little farther out, like it's not quite time. It feels like I probably think they could go faster than he probably thinks.
Yeah, there is that. He's not wrong in his reasoning, like you said. I mean, the first Avengers movie only mainly worked because of the foundation they built ahead of time. But I think that the notion of team ups are very different now than it was in phase 1. Phase 1 and 2 MCU characters still mostly kept to their own movies, and now crossovers are happening with Scarlet Witch, and Loki is slated to appear in Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness, and Doctor Strange is showing up in Spider-Man No Way From Home. So if you want to see characters cross-pollinate, you almost don't. Right now they're kind of setting up, you don't need an Avengers movie to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely true. Look at Captain America Civil War. Look at how many characters were in that. Look at...
you mean Avengers 2.5?
Sure. I mean, I guess I've been known to call Winter Soldier Avengers 1.5.
There you go.
So many people are in that. But, I mean, look at those movies or look at your Thor Ragnarok. Team ups are definitely very, very common. And so, yeah, sure, they still should take some time to introduce new characters. Captain Marvel was introduced in effectively a solo movie, unless you want to count Nick Fury. Shang-Chi's being introduced in his solo movie. But the Eternals, as far as we know, aren't crossing over anywhere. But once they're introduced, like, it's not like they have to ease us into it like they did Nick Fury style,
Mhm.
you know, where you just got this one character who pops up, and his little sidekick Agent Coulson pops up, Son of Cole pops up in a couple of them, and they don't need to do that anymore. They just throw all the toys together whenever they want.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't said it, but I mean, it's pretty much almost understood that this phase will not end with an Avengers movie. This is more than likely going to end with Fantastic Four.
Yeah, and I would not expect that to be the massive one. Maybe somebody shows up and I wonder if that'll be where Spider-Man's next appearance is, because he's supposed to still have a MCU team up appearance.
Future Foundation.
Ooh, I like that. Can we get Can we get those costumes then?
Oh boy,
I like that.
I was not a fan of that, but
I was. I thought it was awesome. But regardless, I don't know. I will happily take the Avengers movies when they're ready to do another one. I still wonder if the next Avengers movie is going to have young in the name, but is it young or is it new? I don't know. We'll have to do a fact or fiction on that someday.
Yeah, it definitely will be at that point. But again, it's a hard act to follow. We kind of said it earlier. It's a hard act to follow when the quote unquote ultimate Avengers movie was Endgame. You know, others will say Infinity War, but again, just like where they left it, you have to expect, you can't expect that for the next Avengers movie. You know, at that point, there is going to be a big step back in the sense of scale. So the question is, if it's not going to be this one, do we see our first Avengers movie in Phase 5? I think that's going to be more than likely. I think they can get away with not doing the Avengers in this. I could see an end credit scene of the forming of the new team, but I think they have to bring in Avengers 5 in the next phase.
I don't see them skipping 2 phases.
Yeah.
Even one phase that technically is unprecedented at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we had 4 Avengers movies in the first 3 phases. Now we're going to go one without. So it'll be an average of 1 per. I don't know, phase 5 feels like the right time if Fantastic Four is truly the end of phase 4.
Yeah. So, all right, listeners, let us know what you think. And yeah, so we'll catch you next week. Stay safe out there, everyone.